The most dangerous myth in school leadership today is that one day your problems are going to stop. We've been sold the fantasy that if we just fix one more thing, one more parent, one more policy, one more initiative, that we'll finally arrive at some stress free summit of leadership. But real leadership isn't the absence of problems, it's how you relate to them. If you keep waiting for calm seas, you'll never leave the harbor. And if your staff sees you crumble every time that the waves hit, they'll never trust the boat. In today's episode, we explore how Jennifer Schwanke reframed challenges as a sign of life and how school leaders can build trust by showing up with steadiness, strategy, and just enough humanity to keep the campus afloat. I'm Danny Bauer, and this is Better Leaders, Better Schools, the original Ruckus cast for visionary school leaders who want to do school different, even within a traditional system, so that you create a campus experience worth showing up for. Thanks to Ruckus Makers just like you, this podcast ranks in the top 1% of nearly 4 million worldwide shows. Today, my guest is Dr. Jen Schwanke, a seasoned educator, principal, and author of a new book that she's here to talk about called Trusted, Trust Pillars and Trust Killers, and the Secret of Successful Schools. Her fifth book, actually, with ASCD. So once again, thanks for listening, and we'll be right back after a few quick messages from our show sponsors. Want to know how top schools create collaborative learning environments that actually work? ODP Business Solutions has equipped innovative educators for over 3 decades. Visit odpbusiness.com/education and let's make a ruckus together. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Community beats compliance every single time. The Ruckus Maker Club is your on-demand network of bold school leaders designing the future of education. Join today for $100 a month and get coaching, on-demand courses, AI prompts and custom GPTs, and all our automatic school frameworks and tools within our private digital community. There's no more PD that puts you to sleep. We have on-demand coaching and pop-ups throughout each month. It's real leadership fuel. You're going to love it. Go to club.ruckusmakers.news to join the fun and start your Do School Different journey. That's club.ruckusmakers.news to get started today. IXL takes the guesswork out of lesson planning for teachers. IXL's ready-made lesson plans are aligned to your textbooks and state standards, so teachers can turn to IXL for the exact content they need to help their students. You can get started today at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right. And Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I know you've mentioned a moment with your father standing on a skid steer when he pointed out your tendency to get frustrated by problems instead of embracing them. So can you bring us to that moment and talk about how it shaped your philosophy, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I've been a school administrator for many years, and I was actually in the principal role for 17 years. And it was about year 14 of that journey. And you're right. My dad's a farmer. He's a contractor, got a lot of skills. And one of his skills is solving a problem. So he had his skid steer lifted as high as it could go. And there was kind of a pallet on the skid steer on which he was standing. And then he had put a step ladder on that. And he had a chainsaw in his hand because he had to get this branch way up high. So he was solving a problem, right? And he's talking to me, and I'm stressing about work and, and just bemoaning the fact that there's all this stuff that was still happening. And he said, you know what your problem has always been? Which, of course, is exactly what you want to hear at age 45 or whatever I was at the time. He said, you always think there's going to be a time where you've solved all your problems and then you'll be done. And he said, that's not at all how it works. And you kind of need to make peace with that. In fact, he said, when you run out of problems, you're dead. So that's problematic. But second, you want problems to come because you want to solve them, because not only does that keep you alive and sharp, but it allows you to do the good you want in the world. And it was pivotal because I thought, well,
Yeah.
daggone, I have been waiting for this time that all the problems are solved, and it's never going to be here. So I started thinking differently after that. I started thinking of problems as an opportunity to do that day's work and work through those problems.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. There's a few books that I recommend to a lot of people, and one is by Phil Stutz and Barry. I don't know if it's pronounced Michaels or Mickles, but they wrote The Tools and Coming Alive. And anyways, they're therapists, and it reflects sort of like mindfulness teaching too, where they talk about like suffering, being desire and this kind of stuff. But also what Stutz says is like, if you have a definition of the world where it gets easy, and that there's no more problems, you're going to have a very difficult life, because the premise of life is that life is hard, right? It's
That's right.
difficult, and that's okay, right?
Right. And not to get too philosophical, but I heard an interview once with a young woman who was, the heir of billions and billions and billions of dollars. And she said, somebody said, "You've never wanted for anything. What does that feel like?" And she said, "You have no idea how badly I want to want." And that stuck with me too, because that's, it's about the chase, right? You get up in the morning and you need to want something. You need to have a problem to solve. And what an empty life it would be. Even if you had all the riches, all the diamonds, all the land, you still need to want something.
Yeah, those are good points. So, Ruckus Maker, who's listening, who's watching, right? You are in a good position if you're facing challenges and obstacles, because it means you're alive. It means you're doing life, because this is how it is for all of us. And I think that the difference between, old Gen and evolved Gen and played safe principles and Ruckus Makers is that you accept life for what it is, and then you work through the challenges, right? Like you
Exactly.
persevere, you get through it. So, I invited you on the show, and I know you got a new book coming out, Trust Pillars, Trust Killers, and the Secret to Successful Schools. I love the title, and I'd like to just invite you to play and riff on the tension between trust pillars and trust killers. What's going on there?
Absolutely. So this book is a little bit different than the others that I've written with ASCD. And it's different because the first chapter is a comprehensive look at the history of education in this country. I started in like 1604. So
Yeah.
what the reason that's important is I started to learn and see, and through research learned that a society reflects its ills, if you will, on its schools.
Mhm.
So, whatever societal or cultural needs, norms, functions, fluctuations that are going on, everybody looks to schools. What are we doing with our kids? And that comes out of a fear of the next generation, right? So, if our generation has messed it up, well, let's hope that the kids don't, right? And so, there's this direct correlation between a society's stability and how it treats its educators. And educators, like all people probably, tend to go into a place of defensiveness. This parent is mad at me. The legislators don't understand. The Supreme Court is not supporting us. We tend to get in that place and we stay there. We ruminate there. So, right now, I believe in our society, there's not a lot of trust for schools. And that's bananas to me because we send our children to schools, we do trust that they'll be okay. And then if there's anything from a broken finger on the slide to a failing AP Chem grade, we get mad at the school. Not all of us, of course, but that's kind of the way the tide is going right now. And so I
Mhm.
wanted to dig into what is it that school leaders do that's breaking trust, that's killing that trust? And how can we kind of do a little proactive reflection, if you will? I know that's an oxymoron, but think ahead of a problem and think, where does trust sit in there? So I try to distinguish in the book the difference between trustworthiness, which we all talk about. We know what you have to do to be trustworthy, honest, do what you say what you do, that kind of thing. But what about being trust willing? And I think a lot of
Mhm.
principals struggle with that concept.
Trust Welling. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, I would love to. So, being trustworthy is being a good human. Again, like, the integrity, the follow through, all of that. I've actually written about that quite a bit. But being trust willing is, asking hard questions. Do I believe in my people? Do I micromanage or am I letting them do their good work? Am I overly critical? Am I the one in the room that talks in deficit language about teachers, about students, about parents? Do I say, we just have these kids have no support at home? That's a conversation stopper because if a principal or a school leader, a teacher says that in a room, it's saying, guys, we're never gonna fix this. So it stops the conversation. And so I think that deficit language, it comes out of a place of being defensive. It comes out of self-protection. We need it to be somebody else's fault, right? But if we say, okay, I'm gonna be willing to trust that a parent is by God doing their best with this kid. I'm gonna trust that a teacher comes to school and wants to do good that day. I'm gonna stop criticizing stupid little things that have no ROI in the classroom with the kids or whatever. I'm gonna let those things go and I'm gonna focus on things that actually are in my zone of influence. And I'm going to be willing to let this team, this school, this department, this teacher, whatever, do what they're trained and hired to do. And trust me, Danny, I know this sounds Pollyanna, but I've seen it happen because of the concept of collective efficacy, which
Mhm.
is not a resource you can buy. There's no vendor out there selling it. It is just a belief. It is
Mhm.
leadership in the sense that you have your teachers, your students, your parents believing that walking into that school every day matters and it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I had a post recently where I was talking about that's actually the number one role
Mhm.
of a ruckus maker, that you're out there to sell belief in your what I call do school different, point of view or
Right.
vision. And that's what I hear, you kind of talking about too, this belief piece. Yeah, I want to back up. I know you have something to say, but the oxymoron proactive reflection, you should call it proflection or preflection and then just make it a term. Yeah,
I do
yeah,
like making up words. It's one of my
yeah,
favorite tasks.
yeah. I mean, I do it all the time, right? And,
Yeah.
and some of it sticks. Like ruckus
Right.
makers do school different. That combination was never a thing. And now it's a thing, and plays principles. That wasn't a thing. Now it is.
Right.
So anyways, yeah, take that, steal it, preflection, proflection.
I love it.
Yeah, I think it's good. But anyways, I think you wanted to say something, if you remember. Otherwise, I could prompt you on a different question.
No, I think again, trust is a word that's been beaten into the ground. Everybody thinks they
Yeah.
know what it means. It's like the word love, right? We all think we know what it means, but there's not a single person who can absolutely define it because they bring their experiences and their stories to that. But in terms of collective efficacy and that belief, you said sell the belief. And I think
Hmm.
part of selling the belief is you have to believe it yourself. I have
Yeah. Well,
seen
start
school
there.
leaders,
Yes.
right? Right? And we have to talk about this because I have
Okay.
seen school leaders and I've worked with them where they say, I know I have to sell the belief. So I stand up in front of my staff and I say, you guys are awesome. And I buy them all donuts on Friday. And I say, this is our culture building. And I do all this stuff, but I don't
Yeah.
know what I'm talking about when I ask them to believe. So as leaders, we have to know what that belief is. And it can't be all the things. It can't be, I believe we're going to improve academic achievement. I believe we're going to improve our data. We're also going to be an awesome place for people that have a sense of belonging. We're going to do all the SEL work. Like it
You'll
it
be
can
perfect.
become right. It can become so incredibly diluted.
So,
And so there you have,
why does
yeah, no, go ahead.
education do that though? Like, like, I feel like schools are especially world class suckiness at trying to be everything to
Right.
everyone when they just, like, any world class organization or team that's, like, yeah, championship level, they are usually have a reputation for being great at a thing,
That a thing.
and they don't stray from that, right? So, but
Right.
what's going
Well, I
on?
I could talk for 18 years about this. What has happened, and again, in my research about the history of public ed, what I have a table in the book, and it shows that in, 1615, there were two goals of education: teach white boys to read a little bit and be able to add a little bit. That was it. Every century and every decade since, we've added something. We added, other subjects. We added guidance counseling. We added meals. We added school safety. We keep adding. And so you can see on a table, and I wish I had it pulled up, I could show you. You can see that the boxes of responsibilities for school every year get bigger and bigger, and it's ridiculously unsustainable. And so
Yeah.
then we have a bunch of people running around with their tails cut off. They're, saying, who's wagging the dog, so to speak, because there's so many things I have to do. I'm overwhelmed. And
Mhm.
no matter what I do well, I've dropped some sort of ball and people are mad about it. So now I have to scoop in and make people not mad that I can't do everything right. So why we do that? Because we have told society we will. We've made that unspoken social contract that we will be everything your child needs. And I
Mm,
agree with you. I don't think that's possible. I think that's why some charters and some private schools do very, very well because they say, this is what we do. We work with
and
ADHD kids.
screw
We
everything
work with
else.
special ed kids, right? We're a language immersion school, whatever, or a behavior school. They say clearly and they articulate what they're going to do. Most schools don't do that. They say, come on in, we'll be everything that you need. And then they wonder why people are mad when they can't.
Yeah, and we'll do it average at best, poorly in most
That's
cases,
right.
so,
That's right. And then
mm,
you got teachers who were like, all I wanted to do was have kids, enjoy a couple novels a year. I wanted to teach English. And now
yeah,
I'm sitting in meetings where I have to figure out a pathways graduation plan for this kid that I don't even know because I've got 130 of them on my roster.
mhm,
It,
mhm,
we've diluted the task too much.
got it. Well, I wanna go back to pillars and killers because I wanna make it practical to the ruckus maker who's watching or listening, and so, given the challenges in society, given, whatever the nation's going through, you see some of that reflected in the schools, and it makes it harder, and given that it's a good thing to be going through challenges. We started the show that way. Yeah, in terms of killers and pillars, like, what do you recommend, the ruckus makers to do?
Well, a phrase that's so overused is build trust, build relationships. It's one of those edgy terms that drives me bananas because we beat it into the ground. Right now I'm going to get to the question you asked. We'll say things like, we have to get back to our why. Well, there's nothing more condescending to a teacher than when a principal stands up and says, find your why. Because
Mm,
that teacher that day might be like, you know what? I'm just trying to get through the day. I don't know. Don't condescend me with what's your why. So what we have to do is put our actions into action or our words into action. So a trust pillar, what is that? When I define this, I think it can be a lot of things. It can be a willingness to be vulnerable and let teachers be vulnerable. It can be coming in every day with a sense of benevolence. I'm going to do good things today. Being reliable. That doesn't mean being perfect. It doesn't mean being, this teacher of the year every year, principal of the year every year. It means being competent, knowing when you're not competent and saying, wow, this is not my jam. I'm going to have somebody else come in and do this. It's
mhm,
being honest. And I have a complex relationship with honesty as a school leader because being honest doesn't mean telling everybody everything all the time to appease them. It means, saying what people need to hear in a kind and empathetic way. And then knowing as a leader how to say to people, this is not something you need to worry about. I've got it, or somebody else has it, that kind of thing. An open mindset. That's a trust pillar. Professionalism, modeling being a professional, calling people on it when they're not professional. So many principals struggle with having those difficult conversations and
mhm,
saying what's true and, maybe making people mad. So a trust pillar is a deep responsibility, but it's not rocket science. It's something that we have to do to make sure that people know we're leading. And that doesn't mean I have another complex relationship with the word support. When principals say, I just want to support my teachers. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean backing them up even when they do things they shouldn't do? Does that
yeah,
mean
right.
doing all the hard work, like calling a mad parent? No, it means teaching them how to do that on their own. And that closes the loop with trust because if I trust that any teacher I hire, any teacher I work with has the skills, the mindset, the personality, and the expertise to call any parent, then I don't have to do it. And
Mm,
then I got a teacher walking around saying, my principal trusts me. And yeah, I do hard things and it's okay.
right on. I think this is a good spot to get some messages in from our sponsors. And when we get back, Jen, I'd love to ask you how sort of emotional regulation and understanding what's going on in the inner landscape relates back to trust. ODP Business Solutions, formerly Office Depot Business Solutions Division, has been a trusted partner for schools for 30 years. At ODP Business Solutions, we're by your side to meet your evolving education needs. Remember that feeling when you wanted to upgrade your learning spaces, but the budget said, maybe next year? Here's what most people don't know. ODP Business Solutions doesn't just offer competitive pricing, we give you access to negotiated cooperative contracts that maximize every dollar. Want proof? We helped the Baldwin School District transform their entire campus while staying under budget. How? By combining smart design with smarter purchasing. From essential supplies to cutting edge tech, from sustainable cleaning solutions to flexible furniture, we're your one stop shop to do school different. And the best part, you can get it all from a single supplier. That helps you simplify ordering and streamlining budgeting while staying compliant with easy access to cooperative contracts. However, you want to advance, ODP Business Solutions has 30 years of experience helping districts like yours get ahead. Visit odpbusiness.com/education to learn more. That's odpbusiness.com/education. Most professional development is one size fits all, irrelevant or worse, a gigantic waste of time. And that's why we built the Ruckus Maker Club. Inside, you'll connect with other visionary school leaders just like you. You can do it on your schedule, all inside a private app. We've got tools to build your automatic school, live coaching sessions, and custom GPTs and AI prompts that help you lead smarter, not harder. The club is your ongoing leadership lab for just $100 a month or $1,000 for the year. You can cancel anytime, but you're not going to want to. Join the movement at club.ruckusmakers.news. You can join us today at club.ruckusmakers.news. What makes an assessment effective? I would argue giving teachers access to quick, reliable, and useful results that inform the next best steps for teaching. And that's where IXL really stands out. Teachers get powerful insights into student performance on a daily basis so they can address issues the moment they arise. Imagine that, adjusting instruction in real time before it's too late. Your teachers have a tool that helps them be even more effective. And your students, they grow and they grow. Check it out for yourself at ixl.com/leaders. That's ixl.com/leaders. All right, and we're back with Jen Schwanke, and she wrote a book, Trust Pillars, and the Secret to Successful Schools, which we're here discussing. And before the break, I kind of previewed the idea that probably emotional regulation and understanding your inner landscape is connected to trust. And so is there anything you want to explore there with me?
So when you say emotional regulation, you mean on the behalf of school leaders, right? Like how we handle ourselves?
Yeah. Like how we handle
Yeah.
ourselves. Yeah.
Right. I've thought a lot about this over the course of my career because this was definitely a weak area for me. For many years, I let emotions get the better of me. And I'm also someone who emotes a lot. When I feel strongly about something or when I'm feeling emotional, the person sitting across from me probably feels that I feel 10 times more than I do because I'm like, the arms start flailing and the eyes get big. And so, emotional regulation for me, this is what the game changer was for me, is having the discipline to press pause, to recognize the physical signs that I feel. And those physical signs are, my gosh, I'm 51 years old. I know them by now. It's a kind of a roiling of the stomach. It's a flush. It's hands shaking a little. And when I identify those signs, I have to have the self-discipline to say, you are not in the right mind to do anything. Instead, you need to articulate, you know what, I'm going to press pause. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go take a little bit of a walk. Can we revisit this? Rather than go into the darkest place in the room. I must be terrible at this job. No one likes me. No one supports
Mm.
me. I'm completely a fraud. This is a disaster. Everything's terrible. How am I going to get through this year? I'm going to set up an appointment with the pension system to see when I can retire. Like that's what happens, right? When
And it was
things
supposed to be getting easier.
it's supposed to be getting easier. So, I have learned with my own emotional regulation, there are very, very few true emergencies in education. There are a couple, but
Hmm.
there are very few situations that don't benefit from a 24-hour pause, 48-hour pause, next week, whatever. Say, this has stopped being productive right now, but I believe we're going to solve this problem. Let's revisit this whenever next week.
What do you think some of the emergencies, like, could you name some of those? Just to make, because I think, yeah, I want to explore that with you in the Ruckus Maker, engaging with this because, I'll tell people this is a bit different, but similar directionally. Like, don't give A effort to D level tasks, right?
Right.
And what you're saying here is like, people will feel, everybody's going to feel like everything is an
Uh-huh.
emergency, but in reality, right, there's
Right.
only a few things. So what are those
Right.
things for you?
So the few things to me are, God forbid, a school shooter,
Right.
a facilities problem, a fire, electricity, water main break,
Yeah.
emergencies. You've got a
Yeah.
school full of kids and they can't use the restroom. That's an emergency. So safety. Let me boil that all
Yeah.
down to safety. But I will never forget this moment, Danny. When I was a first time an assistant principal, I wanted to do it so well. And I had bought all
Yeah.
the high heels. I had gone to Talbot's.
All
I
right.
was I was playing the part. And I got on my walkie, the walkie's constantly going off all day. And then the walkie, room 137, there's a student that needs restraint. And I took off, heels and all, click, 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 down the hall. And I got to the room and I burst in and I helped. Later that afternoon, a teacher came to me and said, when you sprinted down the hall, it scared all of us. And instantly I'm defensive, right? I'm like, you have no idea. I was going down to 137 because the student was melting down and they did that. And the teacher backed off. Well, that night I thought, my God, I probably got there 2.5 seconds faster and I disrupted 18 classrooms on my way down the hall. I got to feel like a superhero with my cape. That felt
And look
great,
good doing it too.
Right. Look at me. I am so good at this and I'm going to go save the day. I gained 2.5 seconds and I made a ruckus in a bad
Yeah.
way
In a bad way.
all the way down the hall. And since then, I always want to sprint. I always want to get to the problem fast and fix it. If I discipline myself to walk slowly, gather my thoughts, get to figuratively room 137 when I get there, my mind is right. I haven't
Yeah.
freaked everybody else out. And I'm much better when I walk in that room. So this is obviously a metaphor now, right? Because I think
Mhm,
this
mhm.
applies to anything that we think is an emergency. Great example. Teacher teaches something, reads a book that offends the kid. The kid goes home, tells mom, mom calls the school, freaking out because the fourth grade teacher read a certain book, whatever. The best answer is not, well, let me go talk to the teacher and I'll get back to you. The best answer is, I'm going to look into this and I'm going to call you by Tuesday, whatever it is, whatever day you pick. To make that promise and then slow the whole roll down a little bit because there is nothing to be gained from treating a non-emergency like an emergency.
That's a great example. Cool. Thank you for sharing it. Another thing I'd love for you to speak on is, many of us, right, change roles, start, jobs at a new campus, and you inherit that culture for better or worse.
Mhm.
So talk to me about stepping into a system where the trust has just been eroding, you know, over the years. And now you're there and you got great big ideas and
Right,
you want to do what's right for the community, but people are hurt. They're damaged a
right,
bit, and
right.
yeah, what do you do?
I have so many things I want to say to that because I work with principals all around the country, and that seems to be the number one problem. I've been hired to
Oh
go
yeah.
into this job. People don't trust the principal. Either that or I'm following a beloved principal and I want to do things different and I need them to trust me.
Yeah.
So, this is wisdom as old as the earth. But the first is don't go in there like a freaking wrecking ball and blow things up. Go slow, listen, and don't listen to the loudest voice or the first voice because those are usually not the majority voice. Take some time to really get to know people. Ask them, how long have you worked here? What does your husband do? Oh my gosh, tell me about your garden. It's those kind of things that will let people know you're going to listen to them. You're not going to be the person that just listens to the loudest voice. And that happens, right? The minute you get the master key, somebody is going to say, "Hey, can I get on your calendar?"
Yeah.
Because they have a bone to pick. And so if you take that person's perspective and you assume they're speaking for 100 people, you're going to make 99 people mad. So slow the roll and take your time, and recognize that trust is not built in a day. It's built systematically, slowly, daily, and give yourself that grace. When I moved into my first principal role, I was an assistant principal at the middle school, and mid-year, an elementary principal opening happened. And my superintendent said, "Hey, what do you think?" And I said, "I have no idea how to run an elementary school. I don't what recess? Like what? I don't how does this even work?" And he said, "This is what I need you to do. I need you to go in there and be nice to people." And I was like, "What? What?" And he said, "They're damaged. They've been through a lot." And there's a big long story about that's not relevant to this story. I'm like, "Well, I can be nice to people. That's actually kind of my jam." So I took over this school in January, and that's literally what I did. I was just really, really nice to people. And that's how I built trust in that building. So if there's damage, if there's pain, if there's resentment, if there's mistrust, be nice, listen, and decide what change needs implemented over time, not by next Thursday.
No, it's not an emergency.
Right.
You
No
gotta
emergency.
slow things down, rebuild.
Slow
So,
down. Right.
last question I have before we get to the questions I always ask. Sometimes, so you can inherit that culture that's been damaged. Sometimes you just inherit or work with teachers that just seem like they never really trust admin, right?
Right.
And I don't know what's going on there, but what would you advise ruckus makers to do there? My gut is sort of like, treat them professionally, but don't waste your time. But what do you have to say?
The phrase I use when people ask me that question is lead around it.
Mm,
I think this is my rough math, okay? It's not research based. This is just my experience. I think there's about 2% of the people you're never going to get. They're angry, they're toxic, they're a cancer to the school, all of those things.
mm,
You can
mm,
spend 98% of your time on 2% of the people, or you can lead around. So, like you said, be professional. If they want to talk, you listen. But you
mm.
also at times have to say, "Hey, this isn't what we do here." I remember working with a teacher years ago, and you know what she was? She was just mean. She was just mean. She's mean to
Just a
kids.
mean person.
And
Yeah.
I sat her down one day and I said, "Listen, we aren't mean to kids here. If you are rude and disrespectful to a 6-year-old, there's going to be disciplinary procedures." And I was kind of sick about it. But I said, "We're moving on as a school. We're not going to even talk about this again." Well, guess what she did? She got up, she marched into the teacher's lounge and she said, "Jen just told me that I'm not allowed to be mean to kids." And all of her friends nodded and said, "Oh, Jen's off. That's terrible. Oh my goodness." But
And
behind
then they all
secretly,
came to you and said, thank you.
their fingers are crossed. They came to me and they said, "Thank you." Nobody
Yeah,
has
because she's a
ever called
bully.
her.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Nobody's ever said, "Hey, we don't do that here." And
yeah.
so I gained the respect of 98% of my staff because they were all chit-chatting about this. And then I moved on. I did not say every week we're going to sit down and talk about how we're not going to be mean to kids. I led around it. I said my piece and then I moved on. And everyone
Mhm.
else was like, "Oh, thank goodness, let's do this." So you
Yeah,
have to,
yeah.
this is a phrase that's common in the instructional coaching world. Coach around. You got to coach around people who aren't going to accept it.
It's interesting. I knew where you're going there. I wish educators could grow into challenging their colleagues, even if they're
Mhm.
bullies. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this is a generalization. There's some that do, but leadership's not a title. It is a title, but it doesn't have to be, right? Like you don't
That's
need to
right.
be principal to lead. You could be whatever.
Right.
You can be a
Right.
custodian, right? And
That's
have
right.
incredible impact on a campus
Right.
and demonstrate
Right.
leadership. But
Well, and
yeah, if
that's
they be direct with those difficult
if they
people,
would.
like
Right.
that would hold
Eh
them in check,
right.
you know?
And what's interesting is we have no problem doing that at home. We'll say to a spouse or a kid or a
Or to the
sibling,
students, yeah.
we'll say, "Stop it. That's not acceptable in this
But to
home."
a coworker,
It's so hard. It's so hard to do because we feel, I think a huge human fear is isolation and loneliness. And there's that
mm,
fear that if I stand up, I will be alone doing so. And that, again, let's close the loop. Collective efficacy comes into play. If we believe we're not mean to kids, we all need to be able to step up and say, "Don't do that."
yeah, right. Okay. Did we miss anything from the book that you want to make sure you add here before I move us
No,
on to the last questions?
no,
No?
I think I'm really proud of this book. It was one
Yeah.
that brought together a lot of the things I've been thinking about. And I didn't even love that it was about trust because again, that's a word that's been beaten to the ground. But I wanted to rethink it. So that's why I wrote the
Yeah,
book.
cool. Well, check it out. Ruckus Maker's Trust pillars, trust killers, and the secret to successful schools.
That's
So,
right.
Jen, if you could put one message on all school marquees around the world for a day, what would your message be?
Work hard, be nice, and do the right thing.
Right on. And if you were building a dream school, you had no sort of limitations in terms of resources. The only constraint was your ability to imagine. What would be the three guiding principles of your dream school?
Work hard, be nice, and do the right thing, sort of. But I would also add getting outside,
Mhm.
touching the earth, time within that dream school for humans to truly connect in a way that adults don't necessarily need to facilitate, but connecting to humans and connecting to the earth and where we've come from.
And we covered a lot of ground today. So, of everything
Yeah.
we discussed, what's the one thing you want a ruckus maker to remember?
I want them to remember that problems are not something to fear or eliminate. Problems are something to embrace and solve and, learn from. Make every problem something that made you better as a human being and as a leader, both at the same time.
Hey, Ruckus Makers, thanks again for pressing play. I hope you enjoyed the show as much as I enjoyed creating it for you. And before you go, if today's episode shifted something in you so that you want to do school different, or maybe you have a new idea about how to reimagine education on your campus, then check out My Principal Coach. It's your AI-powered leadership mentor. It's trained on 10 years of mastermind and private coaching experience that I've had. It's like having a world-class Ruckus Maker mentor in your pocket 24/7. You can start your free 7-day trial at myprincipalcoach.com.